Hey, this is Doug Jones from Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Hellboy 1 and 2, Hocus Pocus, Pan's Labyrinth, and currently on Falling Skies. But today, you are listening to GenreTainment.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of GenreTainment over here at sci-fi-pulse-radio.com. We're your hosts, Marks
and Julie, and GenreTainment is where we talk about what's happening in the world of film, TV, and web series. This is where we give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not-so-independent creations. Now for today's episode, we're chatting with writer-director Jamin Winans.
Yeah, we discuss his new movie, The Frame, his past movies including Ink, his background in filmmaking, tips for filmmakers,
and the mystery of fanny packs.
Yes,
that'll make more sense later.
Now, before we get started, I did want to mention some fun news. I have recently joined the International Academy of Web Television's Award Committee for the 2015 IEWTV Awards.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yes. Well, I'm very excited to be a part of the awards program. It's going to be a really good one this year. It's going to be in April in Vegas.
Since we are talking about web television, and it is almost Christmas, if you're listening to this soon after this episode airs and you're still looking for that last-minute gift that you haven't gotten yet, we should definitely mention Marx's book, Television on the Wild Wild Web, How to Blaze Your Own Trail.
Yes, good point.
Did I put that in there smoothly enough?
I think so, yeah. I would suggest it for web series creators and also filmmakers who want to learn more about using crowdfunding or social media marketing for their films. And if you're interested, you can check it out over at Amazon or straight from the publisher, Michael Weezy Productions at mwp.com.
Now, one last thing we should mention before the interview. We want to point out that the music you just heard at the beginning of the show was a snippet from the theme song from our web series, Reality on Demand. It was a song composed and performed by our friend T-Shawn Hardy, and you can find our web series at realityondemandseries.com. Well, now let's get to our interview with filmmaker Jamin Winans.
When you go to sleep at night, do you like having dreams? Well, when you sleep, people like me come. And we give you and your family and everyone you know good dreams.
Who gives the nightmares?
Well, welcome to the show, Jamin.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
It's great to talk to you again. I actually interviewed you about Ink soon after it came out. So I was very excited to learn that you have a new film coming out called The Frame. So how long has The Frame been out?
Well, I guess to the world, it's only been out for, about a week and a half, I guess. We started touring the film just in the United States about a month and a half or about 2 months ago. We started in Denver. We did a 3-week run in Denver. And then we went to LA, Portland, Seattle, New York, Austin, and a couple other places. We basically just kind of toured at one city at a time and just kind of did what we called sneak peek previews. And then we opened it to everybody just about a week and a half ago, and we put it online. So now the whole world is exposed.
That's a good way of putting it. Now, before we get too heavy into that film, why don't we rewind and kind of give some listeners some background about you? Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into filmmaking?
Yeah, sure. How did I get into filmmaking?
I don't remember.
Where did this all begin, and why? Why did it start?
Why do I do this to myself?
Exactly. Well, so I got into it, before the interview started, Julie, we're talking, you mentioned that you weren't exposed to television a lot as a kid, and I had a very similar upbringing. When I was a kid, we didn't even have a TV until I was about 10 years old. And so when I was growing up, the TV was like this magical thing. I would only get to see TV or a movie screen, on very, very special occasions. And if I was at a friend's house or whatever, that's all I wanted to do was watch their TV, because it was the magic box to me, and where everybody else just grew up with it. So I think that largely kind of influenced me getting into it. So when I was 10, I really started getting into it. I always laugh that before that, I really wanted to be a ventriloquist, and that was the beginning of my
career choice.
Yeah, my storytelling career started as in ventriloquism, and then when I first got my hands on a camera, I quickly dropped ventriloquism and decided that no, the truly pure art form was not ventriloquism; it was movie making. So I got into it when I was about 10, and just borrowing a neighbor's camera and running around with it, and then I always give my aunt Bonnie credit because she would often come out and visit us, and she would always bring her camera, and I would always grab it and make little movies with her, and she would always help me make them. And so I got my first camera when I was 13. My parents said if I went out and got a job and raised half the money, that they would help me with the other half. And so they helped me buy my first RCA Pro Edit camcorder, and
Oh, wow.
that's how I made all my early stuff. It was just on VHS, cutting onto VCRs, and I just did that pretty much nonstop, throughout my adolescence, and attempted to make my first feature film when I was 17, and it was the worst thing you can possibly imagine. And
But it didn't deter you, huh?
It didn't. You know what it did deter me of is I decided after I made that I would never act in my own movies, or in any movie for that matter. When I did that, my friend was supposed to be in it, and I was doing it as an independent study to graduate high school, and my friend kind of bailed on me and wasn't ever available. So I ended up having to put myself in the movie. And I was just so mortified, when I watched it. I was like, I am horrible. I can't look at myself. I think pretty much all the things actors experience.
I was going to say, I've experienced all of those feelings multiple times, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's just it, is like, I think it actually was really good for me to go through that, because it helped me, I think, be a little more sensitive to actors and understand what they're going through. And which is why I never let actors watch playback, because I don't want them to get in their own head.
Yeah.
But anyhow, yeah, I after that, I just did kind of what you're supposed to do, which is I went to film school. I went to LA for a year, and I went to a little film school called Columbia College. And after doing that for a little while, I was reading Robert Rodriguez's book, Rebel Without a Crew, and that really kind of influenced me to just drop out of film school and just start making movies. And so I just started doing that and made my first feature, I guess, when I was 25, or my first real feature at 25, which was 11:59. And then a few years after that, made Ink. And then a few years after that is Now. And that's The Frame.
What was 11:59 about? Can you tell our listeners?
Yeah, so 11:59, boy, it's been a while since I've given the pitch on 11:59.
Because that was released in like 2005, I believe.
That's very good. So that was several years ago now. So 11:59 is about a news photojournalist who is covering a big political story, and he one day suddenly wakes up in a field in the middle of nowhere and has no idea how he got there. When he gets back into town, he realizes that he's missed the last 24 hours, and a bunch of things have changed in the last 24 hours. Then, well, I don't want to ruin the whole movie, but basically, he then lives the next 24 hours, and he then suddenly wakes up again in a field, and he's gone back to live the day that he skipped over. And so that's basically the premise.
Yeah. And you went on to Ink in 2009, I believe that was released. And can you tell our listeners about Ink?
Yeah, Ink is, and it's been a little while since I've done the pitch on Ink as well. Ink is basically about people that come out at night and give you dreams. So there's the storytellers that come out and give you good dreams. They're kind of like angels, and while you sleep. And then there's the incubi who come out at night and give you nightmares. And the story sort of revolves around a father and his daughter who are in between worlds, and it's about the storytellers and the incubi kind of fighting for their souls.
Now, Ink was kind of an interesting how it kind of got out to the general public.
Because that was arguably your first big hit.
Yeah. But soon after being pirated online, it went viral. And if we think that it was seen either legally or illegally over 5 million times since 2009. So how do you feel about having that pirated? And do you think it hurt, or do you think it might have even helped with marketing or sales?
Yeah, that's an interesting situation. Ink, much like The Frame, when we started, so we premiered at a film festival. After 11:59, on 11:59 we went through kind of a very traditional distribution route, and so we had a distributor, and it went really poorly in that the distributor, never really paid us and didn't really put a lot of promotion into it. And it just didn't go well, even though they made a lot of sales and so we were just never paid back most of the money that the film made. And so on Ink, we really were dedicated to self-distributing the film. The problem is we just didn't have the money to do a very proper job. And so we had been touring the film around, various film festivals and doing our own screenings kind of around the country for about, 7 or 8 months before we released it online and on disc and everything. As soon as it came out on DVD, it was like within a week, it got pirated on Pirate Bay. And we didn't even know it had happened. We suddenly just noticed our YouTube stats were going crazy. And we're like, why is this happening? And one of our friends called and said, hey, you guys are on Pirate Bay. And I guess we had done just enough research by that time about piracy that we just knew that for a film our size, it was a blessing, not a curse. And the fact that it was getting so pirated just meant that people are watching it, and it was really great. I mean, we knew the film had fans, just by screening it around the country, but we just didn't have any way to promote it. And the piracy ended up getting it a lot of attention. And I would say the other thing that was happening is Netflix. It was watching movies instantly on Netflix was really a fairly new thing at that time, and so we had just done a deal with Netflix. So within the same month or two that was all going on, it was also on Netflix instant. And so that also was giving us a lot of attention. So sort of between those two things, we were getting an enormous amount of unpaid attention. Because Netflix, the deal that we had with them just wasn't very lucrative. And that's generally the case with most independent films. And Netflix really isn't doing very many independent films at all now, at least not on their streaming. So, I think we did something like a $2,500 deal for a year buyout on Netflix instant. So it had gotten, watched, probably at least a million or 2 million times in that first year on Netflix, and we got paid $2,500 for it. So we actually made more money from pirates who came back to our website and gave us money for the film than we did on Netflix, which is really interesting. So, and I think that it really taught us a valuable lesson that above all else, access is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that now. I mean, I think, Hollywood still is holding on really tightly to a very windowed distribution process where, we release in theaters and then, in the United States, and we go to other countries and release in those theaters, and then we do a VOD release, and then we do a disc release, and it's all very segmented. And I just think that I definitely think the future of film is just release everywhere so everybody can see it.
Yeah, I don't understand why things are released in one country than another. And it's just kind of like, once you release it, just release it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, they're experimenting with that because, like, Snowpiercer was simultaneously in theaters and online, and I think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Well, but
too.
I mean, because things will be released, in the U.S., and then there's a delay before it gets to the UK, or vice versa.
Well, that was big with Doctor Who.
Yeah, but like tech savvy fans are gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna wait a month just because I live on this continent instead of the other. So if I can get it pirated, I will.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we lived in Bulgaria for a little while, and that's a long story. But yes. We've lived in Bulgaria for several months, and in Bulgaria they don't have, and this is in Sofia, which is the capital. Yeah. I mean, they don't have. Like, people don't go to a video store anymore there. If you want to watch a movie, you get on Pirate Bay, period. Like, that's what they do.
That's just what you do,
yeah. And that's a lot of countries. And I think that there's a lot of lost revenue by not making. I mean, these people will pay, something if there's an easy clickable website like a Netflix or something out there that people can go to. But they just...
Yeah, because you think about it, it's kind of weird. It's like distributors are saying, well, since you're, for example, Bulgarian, you're not as important
Yeah,
as,
exactly.
an American or a Canadian or whatever. And it's just kind of like, but then they want them to feel guilty about, say, pirating it. But it's like, well, you already think we're not equal. That's why you're making us wait and you don't care,
Well, that's
so
exactly
why should
right.
I feel any loyalty towards you,
Yeah, I mean, you're giving us this trailer on YouTube, but then you're not letting us see it for a year later or whatever. And that's exactly our philosophy. Is we just feel like, no, we just, because after Ink, we developed this fan base that is from everywhere, and we don't, and that's why we released the frame the way we did. We didn't want to just tour it in the United States for 8 months before anybody could see it. We're like, we're just going to do a fast, concise tour to help generate, buzz and press, but then we're going to release it to everybody simultaneously, because half of our fan base is outside of the United States, and every one of them is just as important as anybody in the United States. And it's really important that they can all have access to it. And the truth is they will find access one way, whether we give it to them or not. So we might as well do it ourselves. And that's why we decided to do, an inexpensive download that includes includes the soundtrack as well. $8, you get the movie and the soundtrack together instantly. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's great for us because, ideally it converts a lot of those people who were just going to pirate it to say, oh yeah, I can afford $8. That's easy. And I get the soundtrack. Why not?
Yeah.
That's kind of been our philosophy.
Now, you talked about the deal with Netflix for independent films. And
Mm-hmm.
Now I've found some independent or just kind of lower budget. Maybe they still had some, but they were lower budget, and I wouldn't have thought to even look for them before, except it pops up on Netflix or I see it. And it's kind of interesting. So I know that I've found some independent things on there. Is that for an independent filmmaker? Is the payoff really, instead of in dollars, is there a payoff in exposure, you think?
I definitely think so. Yeah. We've had this debate a lot over the last couple of years, just kind of saying, is it worth it to do that? And I think it is eventually. I mean, I think, someone told me years ago, which I is now my mantra, which is that the fight in independent filmmaking anymore is not piracy, it's obscurity. You are constantly fighting obscurity because there's so much out there that you need to make sure that people know about your film. And I definitely think Netflix is a way to do that, as is Pirate Bay, and that's why, this time around, we just put it on Pirate Bay ourselves just to let people know that, hey, and we also included a message saying, hey, we're not giving this film away, because that's a really important thing for us to establish, is this film is not free.
Right.
We're not giving it away. This film has a value to us. It's $8. Please come to our website and buy it. If you can't afford $8, and you live in another country and $8 is a lot of money to you, and there's no way you can afford that, then by all means, we still want you to watch the movie.
And help spread the word.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of our attitude about it. But I mean, we didn't get into this to make money. We got into this because we want to tell stories and we want people to have access to them. And if we can survive, then great. And but above all else, we're not a big Hollywood company that's trying to make big dollars doing this. We want people to see the films one way or the other. But if they could pay for them, it sure would help us make the next one.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. There's a difference between I'm in it to get rich, and gosh, we got to be able to pay the bills to make it.
Exactly.
To be able to make this and make another one, because if we go under, then there won't be any more.
Exactly. And our investors, ethically, we owe to our investors to make their money back, and they're good friends of ours, so we don't want to screw them over either. But back to your question about Netflix, I mean, I do think that the exposure is really, really good. And the great thing about things like Netflix is they will recommend, I mean, you'll get movies recommended to you that you wouldn't otherwise check out, but they get a sense of what you like, and if they think you're going to like this obscure movie that you never heard of, they'll recommend it.
We get all
which
kinds
is great.
Of obscure things recommended to us.
Exactly, like Ink, for instance. You're like, what the hell is this
What is Ink?
crazy movie? Well, we'll check it out.
But Ink caught on because We were at Dragon Con
Oh,
a
this was
few years
neat.
back. I can't remember when
Oh
it
my
was.
gosh, it's been several years. It must have. I think it was right after Ink came out.
Probably. And we actually saw someone dressed up.
It was a really good costume.
yeah.
If anyone out there
really?
is listening, and this was you at Dragon Con right after Ink came out, we loved your costume at Dragon Con
That's so
because it
cool.
was so freaking cool. I mean, you wouldn't have thought that would have been something you could have recreated in real life very well. But I mean, it was, and we saw him even from a distance. We were like, "Oh my God, Ink!" You know.
I wish we could see that.
And they walked around in character, and it was really creepy.
Yeah,
That's
we have a
great.
picture of it somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, send it. We would love to
Oh
see it.
God,
Yeah.
it'll take us a while to dig it up.
we get pictures sent to us from time to time from various Comic Cons and stuff of people dressed up as, characters, and it's like nothing warms our heart more than that. It's just really cool.
If you
and
want
I'm
good
sure
costumes, Dragon Con is just one of the best.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's when you know. That's when you have a good fan base, when they show up in costume.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's commitment for sure.
So about Ink, I did want to ask real quick. There's a lot of great things about Ink, but I really found it interesting, like the fight scenes, because there's like parkour style.
Yeah,
mixed
we always
in there.
zero in on the fight choreography.
Oh, cool.
Did you want to talk a little bit about how you set up those fights and who did that?
Yeah, so our good friend Brian Taylor, who we call Bama, who actually one of the characters in the frame is named after Bama. Mm-hmm. He's just this amazing guy. He used to be a breakdancer actually, and then he got into parkour, and so he's or free running, depending on who you are. But he's a free runner, and he also had done some fight choreography, and so I had filmed he and his team of free runners. Just one day I just thought that this was years ago, I just thought what they were doing was really cool, and so I went out with my camera and just filmed what they were doing and cut it together. And when we were working on Ink, I was like, it'd be great to just have some fights going on in these scenes that would just be unique. And so I talked to him about it and said, what do you think? How would you like to work for free for a couple months and choreograph these fight scenes?
Who could pass that up?
Yeah, who could possibly? And even more, and he and all of his guys were the Incubi, and so he, I think he's the first Incubi that appears in the film. But yeah, I mean, and they had to wear these like really hot outfits, and we're just sweating through them, and it was pretty miserable all in all. But they were great. I mean, and the fights are the way they are because of them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to shoot though. It was a lot of fun, at least for me. I didn't have to sweat through it and get banged up, but.
Yeah, that's a large group of a lot of people who don't seem to care about whether they get hurt.
Yeah. Lucky for us.
And you were kind of on.
Everyone needs crazy friends.
That's right.
I see parkour more and more now in TV shows.
Oh,
and movies,
yeah.
But you were still kind of like in a cutting edge there.
Yeah.
Where it hadn't quite caught on. It was just
I
starting.
remember the first time I saw it, I thought, what are those people doing? I mean, it looks like fun. Don't get me wrong. But
Yeah, no, it's crazy. No, it really did start taking off. Yeah, shortly after that, but yeah, it was starting to take off when we were making Ink, and I think it's cool. So my friend Brian now runs a parkour gym where he teaches kids, like young kids, to do it, and it's really cool. I actually just went and saw his gym just the other day, and was just amazed to see these 10-year-old kids doing incredible stuff.
Well, it's cool. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, if you grow up in a big city, I mean, I was fortunate enough. I lived, on a lake and near woods. I mean, we climbed and we ran around and we climbed and we jumped in things, and but it was just in a different, environment. But yeah, I mean, if you're in a big city, that's your jungle. I mean, that's your woods. That's your lake. I mean,
Exactly.
you make your fun where you are.
Just don't fall off the very tall trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that the leaves in the ground give a little bit more, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. That sounds more dangerous to me.
I mean, you can fall on a rock, so that's not good. But the ground gives a bit more.
Okay, and so your newest movie is The Frame.
Yeah.
So can you tell our listeners about what The Frame is about?
Yeah, let's see. Can I? So we've been
In 60 words or less. No, I'm just kidding. Just tell us more what it is.
So yeah, I think by now I can start giving more of our explanation. I was really, early on, I was really against telling anybody anything about it before they saw it. But but I'll talk a little bit about it. So the frame it is about two different characters. One is a female paramedic, and the other is a career criminal.
I was going to say
basically.
an independent contractor of sorts.
Yeah, he's a young man who is essentially trying to get out of a cartel. And
I was going to say, he is a career criminal, but you get the feeling it's not fully by choice. I mean, he just
exactly. So the film opens, it's on these two characters. So it opens on a big heist where Alex, our lead character, is trying to steal from a bunch of pharmaceuticals, and it's this kind of very intense, very quiet heist that's going on. Then we cut to Sam, our other lead character, who is a paramedic in a domestic violence situation. And so we see these kind of two scenes play out back to back. But then we cut back to Alex, and Alex comes home, turns on his TV to watch his, favorite television show called Urban Hope, about a young paramedic named Sam. And we realize at that point that Sam is actually a character on a television show. And then we cut back to Sam's world, and Sam comes home from her day and turns on her television to watch her favorite show. And we realize that she is watching a show called Thieves and Saints about a young cargo thief named Alex. And we realize that his life is also a television show. And so the rest, I will let you. That is the teaser. You got to watch the rest. Find out what happens.
Yeah, I tell you, the heist. That was really cool and elaborate. But then, the domestic violence scene with her. That was rough. I mean, that was rough to watch. I mean, because
good. I'm glad you
because you realize it's real. I mean that happens, and it happens a lot like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That was definitely, it's funny because when I watch it, I see my good friend Jeffrey, who is playing that role, and he is the sweetest, most gentle guy you'll ever see.
Wow, he's a very good actor, because I would cross the street to get away from that guy.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that, because it's at various times it's like, man, I hope this sells, because I mean all I see is Jeffrey doing this, but yeah,
That's
he's
hard when it's your friend, because you know what they're really like.
Exactly. And but he really brought it. They all did. That was actually, that particular scene was the very last thing that we shot in our schedule. So it was really tough, actually. We spent 2 days shooting that scene, and we were in this really hot house without air conditioning, and it was like 100 degrees, and it was just really tight quarters and very physical. And so I think it lent to the scene for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say a joke earlier, but I didn't know how far you're going to get into plot. Whenever we were asking you about your filmmaking, and you said, I don't know, how did I get involved in filmmaking? I was going to crack like a joke. Well, maybe you're actually a TV character.
He's so happy
Maybe I
to
am.
say that now.
And that is the message of the frame. We are all just TV shows.
I demand a new writing team and showrunner is all I can tell you. And I'm going to go on strike until I get it.
That sounds good. I will join you in this strike.
Because I got to tell you, this group we got now for me ain't working out.
I don't know how to take that.
Besides you.
I am always interested in how writers, come up with their initial idea, what sparks that idea. Because you come up with really, I think...
His writers came up with it.
You or the writers who write you. Come up with really...
This is just what I was given.
Sorry,
I just play the...
He and I are just having way too much fun with this. So sorry.
But you always come up with very, unique ideas. Like I mentioned to someone the other day about the frame, and up to pretty much the point where you stopped about what the concept was, and they're like, I've never heard of anything like that before. Yeah. So I'm curious what sparked the idea for the frame.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things, to me, I guess, I do this because I always want to be doing something different. And I think that first and foremost, I think just the desire to try to tell a story that you haven't heard before. That's kind of the first part of it, I guess. But for me, I I guess I always start with images, and I keep a notebook. I just write down a ton of ideas. Usually for me, it starts with theme. I with the frame, in Ink and 1159, I think they're all films in some way about a common theme, which is to some degree man's relationship to God in some way, and sort of constantly, and I think it's just because it's the thing that I probably think about the most and struggle with the most, is trying to understand, why we're here, and, is there a God? If there is a God, then why do horrible things happen? How does the universe work? And I think that it all kind of stems from those themes. And so I think that's underlying everything that I think about. So when I think about kind of crazy ideas, it's all kind of stemming from that. It's usually not it's not me saying like, oh, here's a great sci-fi idea. I just think it's that sci-fi is just a really great genre to explore a lot of crazy ideas. And I think we live in a sci-fi world. I mean, I think that's, sci-fi is only science fiction until it becomes just science, right?
Right.
And
we're living on the edge keeps moving. I mean, we're really living on the edge of science fiction at any moment now, all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I say that constantly. Every time I, look at a tablet or a phone, I'm like, man, we are living in science fiction right now. This is, if you showed me this 10 years ago, my mind would have been blown, So, but anyhow, I think that the writing process usually starts with just an image, just a visual that I'll get, or a few different visuals. So, with the frame, it started, or with Ink, I'll start with Ink. It started with, a couple different images. I had one image, which is in the film, which is a guy in a hospital with essentially angels and demons sort of fighting behind him. And so that was sort of the first one of the early images I had. And so I just started asking questions of how did it become that? How did he get there? With the frame, I think it very much started with an image of, there's a couple images. It was an image of a man and a violin, and the other image was a man trapped in a cage trying to get out. So those images, I just started asking questions from there, just asking who is he, why is he there, and those questions eventually become, help define who the characters are, and eventually becomes the plot. But as far as the actual, like, the script writing process goes, I will outline for a really, really long time. I'll usually just sit with a notebook for a year, and I'll usually do really, really extensive outlines. I mean, outlines that are hundreds of pages long. And then I'll, once I really feel really secure with the overall structure, then I'll go back and I'll, write the script fairly quickly. I'll actually write the script within, a couple months, but it's because I've done a ton of legwork to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can see those themes that you were discussing, like in Ink and the frame.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that's interesting about the frame that I also liked was that your two lead characters are minorities.
Yay!
Oh yeah. That's interesting. A couple people have brought that up, and I forget that that's the case. But yeah, that was a very conscious decision early on. I mean, to some degree. I mean, especially his character. I mean, his character was.
There's a real backstory that explains that
exactly
would really only work with who he is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Am I helping you explain it without giving away too much?
No, that's perfect. That's exactly right. So his backstory really had to define, what his ethnicity was. With her, we weren't really sure. I guess we just felt like we wanted somebody of some sort of ethnicity, just because I just felt like it's just what I wanted to see on screen. I think it was just a decision that we made early on, of just say, let's just not go the stereotypical route here, and let's cast a unique person. When we saw Tiffany Muallim, who plays Sam, she really kind of told us who the character needed to be, I think, because I felt like that the character, script wise, I felt like there was a lot of room to grow, and it wasn't until I saw her do a reading of a scene that I was like, yes, that's exactly what it needs to be. Because we saw a lot of really talented actresses, but she just brought something unique to it. And again, the same thing with David Carranza, who plays Alex. We I had a different idea about what the character would be. I think mainly just sort of how he would come across. And when we saw David, I mean, David's a really masculine guy, I mean, and an actor, and he just has a real bravado. And when we saw him, I was like, well, that's not what I was thinking of at all, but it's better than what I was imagining. He just really had a really strong presence, and both are really, really trained actors, and they're training. I mean, they're really talented, and we just knew that with, rehearsing or with auditioning with them, we just knew that they were really going to bring it.
Yeah, that's what, we always liked. It's like we want to cast for the best person to play the role. So whatever you bring to it and how well you do, we'll worry about what the character's supposed to look like within, unless there's a specific reason they have to look a certain way. It's like, well, we'll come up with a backstory for later. We just want the best person for the role.
Yeah.
And we like to see that because, we've talked about it, like we in regular life, like we go to work and like, my boss is a woman and she's black, and I go to church and it's open and affirmative and multiracial. And then we get together with our friends and family, and our family are different race and nationalities and everything. But then, you come home and you turn on a TV and everybody is like between the ages of 18 and 35, and the main characters are white. And everyone's straight unless this one person is gay, and that's the entire thing that defines them, and they're a stereotype.
Yeah. The quirky gay guy.
Right. And it's just kind of like that, but when you live your daily life, that's not at all what your life is like. But then you turn on TV or you go watch a movie and it's kind of like, who are these people?
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because we really had to make a very conscious decision early on because we knew it was going to actually be hard on us marketing wise. I mean, the film was going to be a hard thing to market to begin with, just because we weren't willing to give away a lot of the plot points. But the other thing was that, when you don't have a white, cast or, a couple leads, that really hurts you. And it especially hurts you in the foreign market. It does. It does. I mean, for instance, it is. I mean, it's really, for instance, it's really, really hard to do sales in a lot of Asian countries if your leads aren't white. And it's just the way, I mean, it's just the way the cultures work. They want to see white actors, and that's the way
to them it defines it being American, or
exactly. I don't know that it's like
specifically.
Yeah, I don't know that it's like specifically like a racist thing. I think it's and maybe it is, but I think it's more that's how they see America is white blonde people, and like that's who they expect to see in their American films.
I've traveled and I've had people surprised. They're like, "Oh, we don't look like an American," and I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean I don't look like an American? I mean, what does an American look like? Like we look like everything, right?" And then like they'll be like, "Well, you're not dressed like an American," and they were like, "You're not wearing like a Guess hat and name things with name brands on them with the logos prominent, and you're not wearing like a fanny pack, and your skin's too light and your hair's too dark." And I'm like, dude, what do you think Americans look like? Like we look like everybody, we're everything.
Yeah.
But there is a stereotype even in Europe that of what an American is, and it's kind of, I don't know how it got started, but it is so far off the mark.
No, I think, I mean, the stereotype is true in some senses. Yeah. I mean, I think that Americans are known, like for instance in Mexico, is you can always spot an American because they're the fanny pack and the shorts. I don't even know anyone with
a fanny pack. Who are these people?
But you see it. You do.
It must be like, I don't know, maybe older people.
I think, yeah, and I think too,
that can afford to travel. They don't have kids. Or
the fanny pack left such an impression in the '80s that everybody still remembers it.
Traumatized by the fanny pack.
Yeah, we're officially just like that's our branding is the fanny pack, and we can never shake it.
I don't even know anyone with one.
They're out there.
They're out there. But yeah. So it was definitely a choice, and but I think that that's the future. I mean, hopefully I do think Hollywood
Minority
is.
actors, not fanny pack.
No, minority actors.
Yeah.
We're
Sorry.
going to reclaim the
To be
fanny
clear,
pack. Let's get a
I,
minority
actually,
actor with
I was
fanny
talking
pack.
very specifically about fanny packs, but and that was going to bring me to my agenda as a filmmaker is to include fanny packs.
You've got to put one in as the Easter egg in the next movie.
I know. Just thinking, could I develop a whole plot around that?
Oh, please do.
Yes,
Anyhow.
next movie, The Fanny.
And the sequel, The Pack.
The pack.
I don't even know where we are now.
I don't know what's happening. But okay, so racial diversity. Of course,
That's
and
right.
more
We were actually
minority
talking
actors.
about something serious.
Are those two actors out of the Denver area, or did you fly them in?
No, most of the cast, I would say, is the two leads. So the way we cast it was we used Actors Access and Breakdown Express. We just had a really diplomatic casting process where we just said anybody in the United States can submit a reel, basically. And so we got a couple thousand submissions, and then Kaiwa, who I've yet to mention, who's a huge part of this, Kaiwa, who's my wife and producer, she was essentially the casting director as well, and so she went through.
Oh my God, she's a saint.
Tons. Yeah, she really is. I mean, she just went through just enormous amount of submissions, and really seriously looked at everybody, because you just never know when there's a gem out there, and that's exactly what we found. So David is from New York. And Tiffany she's from Jersey originally, but she's in LA now. So those two, and then Cal, who played Noah, who is the old man in the hospital. He also is LA, but I think virtually everybody else some of them are live in LA, but they're all kind of have Denver roots. They're actors that I either knew or had worked with. Chris Kelly, who was in Ink, of course, played the double character in this. And he was also in my first film, 11:59, and several other films. I think I've made something like 6 different things with Chris at this point. So he's kind of just a regular fixture. Somebody asked me at a Q&A if he was on retainer, and we can't afford to keep him on retainer. But fortunately, he's a good friend, so he always comes out and helps us out.
Yeah, we have an actor that I tease. I said, I'm going to someday get you in like a blood contract that says that whatever we make, you have to be in, because we want you in everything.
Yeah, that's a good problem for an actor to have, for sure. That I'm sure they love working. So
Yeah.
So with Ink and The Frame, what would be the single biggest challenge you faced for each of those, excluding money, because it's always a challenge?
Yeah. Taking that one off the table.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the same is true on both of them, that just the resilience you have to have. I mean, just the perseverance. And you guys know, just the production world in general and making films. I'm sure the same is true with web series. It just takes so much persistence. And, when you're doing something like Ink, for instance, was an 83-day shoot, and The Frame was a 58-day shoot. So you're spending so much time. And you're about a third into the process. You're just trying to you're just telling yourself to just keep going, because you're not sleeping, you're not eating very well, you're on your feet, 14 hours a day.
It's physically very draining. Yeah.
It is, and it's extremely stressful. I mean, you're constantly trying to control the uncontrollable, especially if you're shooting on location constantly. You're constantly at the mercy of the weather, and are people going to show up, and so I think just getting through it is the hardest part.
Surviving the process is the hardest part.
Just the whole thing is really the hardest part.
All of it.
But yeah, I think for me maybe the biggest thing is on Ink was just trying to keep the crew going. I think Ink was a particularly brutal shoot. I mean, they're both pretty tough shoots, but Ink was really brutal. I think it was a really ambitious project, and it was just hard to just keep everybody motivated and keep everybody going. The Frame, I'm trying to think of what kind of the biggest challenge was. I would say The Frame was a little bit smoother, but I think it was just kind of keeping everybody going. But we had on the frame, and we just had a couple of really key people that were just so motivated and just so positive the whole time. But they honestly kind of kept me going. But of course, money is just, you're always trying to figure out how to do a lot with very, very little.
Now, you were talking about the biggest challenges, such as, surviving it and making it through with your health and your mind intact. Are there any funny stories from set that you would like to share?
Oh boy. I think it depends on which movie you're talking about. But I know the story that we always like to tell about Ink was that Quinn, who was our little actress in Ink, she had a lot of kind of physical stuff to do, but there was just certain things that we just couldn't have her do. For instance, like Ink jumps off a balcony with her on his shoulder. And, there's a lot of kind of, things where he's carrying her and doing fairly physical things. So in order to deal with that, we couldn't have like a stunt person. So we ended up making a Quinn doll. And Kiowa sewed together a doll that looked surprisingly like Quinn. And so in any sort of stunt situation, Chris, who played Ink, would throw the Quinn doll on his shoulder. And so we were constantly hauling the Quinn doll around. And one location that we went to is this warehouse, and the guy who was running the place didn't really speak English. Kiowa was getting the Quinn doll out of the car and was stuffing it into a garbage bag. And the guy comes over and says, La Nina? And she's like, oh, no, this is just a doll. Look, it's just a doll. Because he had seen Quinn walking around earlier, and suddenly sees Quinn getting shoved into a garbage bag.
Well, bless his heart for going to check on her.
Yeah, it was pretty great. And we still keep the Quinn doll in a box. And so she's stored safe and sound.
That's not creepy at all.
Yeah, that's right.
She's like, you wake up one night, she's standing at the foot of the bed. Do you want to play?
Yeah. But the frame, I'm trying to think if there's any like hilarious stories. I'm sure there were. More than anything, with the frame, I think we just had a really funny crew. I mean, we just had everybody, and that was the thing, is that our crew was just, they were such a delight, and they kept us laughing the whole time. So despite it being really difficult, we were constantly laughing, which was good. And the frame is a really heavy movie in a lot of ways, and so you did have to laugh a lot because we were doing some really heavy dramatic scenes. And so David and I would constantly sing Feel My Heat, which is, if you guys have seen Boogie Nights and seen Mark Wahlberg doing his song, that he's singing a song called Feel My Heat, and so we would always sing that on set just to keep the mood light.
Still not as creepy as the doll, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Now, we have a lot of filmmakers, web creators, writers who listen to the show.
We do?
Uh-huh. Are there any tips you'd like to share with them that you learned working on these films?
Yeah, I think anybody who's just getting into it, I think that people can't underestimate how difficult it is, first and foremost, and that if you really want to do it, be absolutely sure you really want to do it. I mean, I think you have to be really, really passionate to do it. And so I think that first and foremost, don't go down the road if you're in it to make money, or if you're in it to, for glamour or whatever, because those things.
There's nothing glamorous about the process of making a film.
And even the glamorous moments are not so glamorous. Yeah. So you really have to be passionate, and you really have to want to do it. And I think, have something to say too. I mean, I think a lot of people just want to make movies, but they don't really know why. And I think, make sure you have something you want to put into the world. And I think that's the most important reason to be a filmmaker. But I think, getting past that, if you're doing this, I mean, I think the thing that, like I just said earlier, I think perseverance is the absolute key. I mean, I think you just have to keep on doing it. It's really, really difficult, but it's also really rewarding in a lot of ways if you love doing it. But you just have to go in just saying, like, I'm just simply going to keep going no matter what. we've definitely had our struggles over the years, and that's the one thing we say to ourselves when we're just ready to throw in the towel. We just say, no, just keep going. This is what we're supposed to be doing, and we're going to keep doing it. And so I think just anybody out there doing it, just keep going. Eventually, it will pay off. I very firmly believe that.
Just for another possible tip or some advice, you've done a good job building up this fan base. What is it do you think that you've done that's helped do that and sustain it?
The same thing, which is just time, perseverance. I started, so I'm 37 now, and I started an email list when I was about 20, and that started with just like family and friends, and then just collecting emails, so I was making short films. And so every time we would do like a screening of a short film, I would have a clipboard with an email list sign up. And some of those people from 17 years ago are still on our email list. It started there. And then, it helps to have some films that people like. So that makes a
minor
difference.
detail, really.
Yeah, we made a short film, Spin, several years ago that got a lot of attention, and that, and then people found our website, and then that, helped grow our email list. But it's just taken 17 years to basically build the fan base that we have now. So, it just takes time, and it doesn't always, it doesn't have to take 17 years. It just depends on what you're doing and who likes your work and all of that. But I would say that it's just always been an emphasis for us. I think that, a few years ago, we just realized that we were always going to self-release our films, and that meant that we had the opportunity to bring our stuff directly to our fans and have a direct connection with our fans. And so we've tried to nurture that as much as we can. And quite honestly, it's actually been the thing that's helped keep us going, is that, sometimes you do want to give up, but when you're constantly getting people, writing emails saying, hey, I love your films, or, this really made a difference for me in my life, things like that. It's just like, okay, well, we got to keep on going, and our fans really, I think, have helped carry us. And that was true of Ink. Ink was successful because there's just so many people out there handing their copy to their friends saying, you got to watch this. And that's starting to happen with The Frame too. We've had, a lot of people emailing us saying, I've watched it 3 times, and I'm getting like a group of people together to watch it. And it's those people that make all the difference. To us, it's not so important to have like 1 million fans. It's more important to have just the right fans. And that's been the case. So yeah, did that answer your question? Yes. I kind of went off on a tangent. I've been going off on a lot of tangents.
We have that effect on people, don't worry.
Yeah.
So what's next after The Frame? Yeah. I know you're busy promoting it quite a bit, but are you working on outlining a new project?
Yeah, I am. There's a couple of things, but one in particular, it's very, very hush hush. But
that's the name. Hush hush.
Hush hush.
Hush, no, code name Fanny.
I would say hush hush. That's going to be the sequel to
name Fanny.
Buffy episode.
I'm just gonna say.
No, we decided it's The Pack.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna say it's gonna star an American. Hint, hint. So. No, I can't say a whole lot about it, but I will say that, after the 1159 Ink and now The Frame, we're planning on taking a pretty drastic turn on the next one. It'll still be very, very much us and what we do, but I'm planning on something really, when I tell people after they've seen The Frame, I said, well, wait till the next one. It's really going to be crazy. And a guy was like, crazier than that? Like, but it's going to be something, I'm trying to just constantly make things that I want to see and try to make things that haven't been done before. And so it'll be pretty crazy. So that's all I can say. It definitely is in this sort of the sci-fi genre, but it's going to be pretty wild. So, but we'll have to talk about that when we get closer to that one. Yeah.
Now, where can people find you online and your work?
And your work online. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, good question. The best place to find us. So if you want to actually see the films, the best place to go is just doubleedgefilms.com, or you can type in jaminwinans.com as well, and that'll get you there. We're on Facebook. So if you're a fan of Ink, we have an Ink Facebook page. Just look up Ink on Facebook. And the same thing with The Frame. The Frame is We have Facebook pages for that as well. And we're also on Twitter as Double Edge Films. We're on Instagram. We're on Tumblr.
You're everywhere.
We are everywhere, but we're probably the most active on Facebook. It's a great place to just write us, and we leave comments, and yeah, that's where it's all going down. Oh, and of course, The Frame is also on iTunes and Amazon and several other places.
Hello everybody, my name is Timo Vuorensla. I'm a director of an awesome film about the Nazis from the dark side of the moon called Iron Sky, and you are listening to GenreTainment.
Well, thanks to Jamin for taking the time to speak with us. We had a great time, and if Ink, The Frame, or 1159 sound like something you want to see, then click on over to the Double Edge Films website to buy a copy.
And before we go, we want to remind you that you can keep track of us on our GenreTainment Facebook page, my Twitter account, which is @MrMarks, it's MRMARX, or our website at GenreTainment.com, or all of the shows at SciFiPulseRadio.com.
So that's it for today's GenreTainment. We'll be back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series.
GenreTainment is a production of Alien Jungle Bug Productions.
Until next time. Bad monkey.